Hey everyone, and welcome back to our story time. Tonight, we have an incredible story about a man named Joshua and a city with walls so big they seemed to touch the sky. After the great leader Moses passed away, a new hero named Joshua took his place. God chose Joshua to lead the Israelites, his special people, into a new land he had promised them. Their very first challenge was a giant city called Jericho. Now, Jericho wasn't just any city. It was protected by massive, super thick walls. They were so high you'd get a sore neck just trying to see the top. It seemed totally impossible to get inside. Joshua gathered all the people. The soldiers were ready, their shields shining in the sun. But it wasn't just people getting ready for this big event. The donkeys were there too, carrying all the heavy supplies on their strong backs. Little birds chirped and flew ahead, almost like tiny scouts, soaring over the fields towards the giant city. It was a huge parade of people and animals, all moving together, all trusting God and their new leader, Joshua. They marched and marched until they were right in front of Jericho, staring up at those impossible walls. What in the world were they going to do? Standing before the giant walls of Jericho, Joshua prayed to God. God, he asked, how can we possibly get past these walls? They're too big, too strong. And God answered with a plan. But it was a very strange plan. It wasn't about fighting or using big machines to break down the walls. God told Joshua, here's what I want you to do. For 6 days, you and all your soldiers will march around the city just once each day. And you must be completely silent. No talking, no whispering, not even a little peep. God also said that 7 priests should walk ahead, carrying special trumpets made from ram's horns. After you march, God continued, everyone goes back to camp. You do this for 6 days straight. Then God explained the final, most important part. On the 7th day, things will be different. On that day, you will march around the city not once, but 7 times. And after the 7th time, the priests will blow a long, loud blast on their trumpets. When you hear that sound, I want every single person, every man, woman, and child, to let out the biggest, loudest shout they possibly can. Joshua trusted God completely. He gathered everyone and told them the plan. It sounded strange, but they knew that God's ways were always the best ways. So they prepared for the most unusual battle plan ever. Silence, marching, and a giant shout. So the very next morning, the first day, the incredible march began. Just as God commanded, the soldiers, the priests with their trumpets, and all the people started walking around the giant city of Jericho, and they were completely silent. The only sounds were their feet shuffling on the dusty ground. Even the animals seemed to know this was a special, quiet time. Lions, which were sometimes with them, walked with quiet, padded paws instead of a mighty roar. The donkeys carrying supplies just swished their tails, not making a single bray. Inside the city, the people of Jericho watched from the top of their huge walls. At first, they were probably a little scared, seeing this huge army. But then they just saw them walking, silently. Around and around they went, once, and then they just left. The people of Jericho started to laugh. What are they doing? They probably snickered to each other. Are they trying to make us dizzy? This is ridiculous. On the second day, the same thing happened. A silent march, once around the city, and then back to camp. The laughter from the walls of Jericho grew louder. They thought Joshua and his people were crazy. Day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, the same thing every single day. The Israelites kept marching, their faces serious and focused, obeying God's strange command without a single word. They kept their faith even when it looked foolish to others. Then came the 7th day. This was the big one. They woke up extra early, as the sun was just peeking over the horizon. The air was filled with excitement. Today was the day. They began to march, just like before. But this time, they didn't stop after one lap. They kept going. Once around, twice around, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. The people in Jericho were probably very confused now. Why were they marching so much today? Finally, they started the 7th and final lap. As they completed the circle, they all stopped. A hush fell over the entire crowd. The priests lifted the ram's horn trumpets to their lips. And then, blast! A long, loud, powerful sound from the trumpets echoed across the land. At that very moment, just as God commanded, Joshua yelled, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." And every single person took a deep breath and let out the mightiest, most earth-shaking shout you could ever imagine. It was a shout of faith, a shout of victory, a shout of trust in God. And then the impossible happened. The ground began to tremble. The huge, thick, impossible walls of Jericho started to shake and crack. And with a giant rumbling boom, the walls didn't just break, they crumbled completely flat into a pile of dust and rubble. It was a miracle. There were no walls left at all. The path into the city was wide open. God's people simply walked straight in, just like he had promised. The victory that day wasn't won with swords or spears or powerful weapons. It was won with something much stronger, faith and obedience. The people of Israel didn't knock down the walls themselves. God did it for them. They just had to trust his plan, even when it seemed strange, and obey his commands, even when it was hard to be silent or felt silly to march. They shouted not to scare the enemy, but to declare that they believed God would do what he said he would do. Their faith was their real weapon. By following God's instructions step by step, they allowed him to work a miracle that no army could have ever accomplished on their own. It showed them, and it shows us, that with God, nothing is impossible. He can make a way where there seems to be no way. So, what can we learn from this amazing story of Joshua and the falling walls? Well, sometimes in our lives, we face problems that feel like giant, impossible walls. Maybe it's a really hard test at school, a disagreement with a friend, or feeling scared about something new. These problems can seem so big and strong, just like the walls of Jericho, that we don't know how to get past them. But Joshua's story teaches us a powerful lesson. Instead of trying to knock down the walls all by ourselves, we need to trust God and obey what he says. It might feel strange, like marching silently around a city. It might take patience, waiting for 6 whole days. And it might require us to be bold and shout with faith, believing he will help us. When you face your own Jericho walls, remember to pray and listen for God's plan. Trust him, do what he asks you to do, and watch as he makes those impossible walls come tumbling down. He is always with you, and he is stronger than any problem you will ever face. Thank you for listening tonight. I hope this story reminds you to always have faith, sleep well, and dream of miracles. Good night.